Have you ever looked around and wondered why some people seem completely comfortable being alone? No constant messages, no big friend group, no endless social gatherings. And yet they seem calmer, stronger, and more confident than many people surrounded by people all the time. Most of society assumes that if someone has very few friends, something must be wrong with them. But what if the opposite is sometimes true? What if some people aren't alone because they were rejected? What if they're alone because they've learned something most people never do? Psychology suggests that certain individuals become so self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and selective about their relationships that they stop chasing connection for the sake of connection. Today, we'll explore 5 powerful traits often found in people who have very few friends, or simply prefer not to follow the crowd. And by the end of this video, you may discover that being alone and being lonely are two completely different things. 1. They don't need constant approval. Most people spend a large part of their lives trying to be accepted. They adjust their opinions, hide parts of their personality, laugh at things they don't find funny, and sometimes become someone they're not just to fit in. But people who are comfortable with having few friends often operate differently. Their sense of worth doesn't come from how many people like them. It comes from how honestly they can live with themselves. They don't measure their value through followers, attention, invitations, or popularity, because they have learned a powerful truth. The need for constant approval can become a prison. When your happiness depends on other people's acceptance, your identity is no longer yours. That's why these individuals rarely force themselves into groups where they don't belong. They would rather be genuinely accepted by a few than superficially admired by many. If they spend time with someone, it is usually a conscious choice, not a desperate attempt to avoid loneliness. They seek connection from a place of completeness, not emotional emptiness, and that makes their relationships far more authentic. 2. Solitude becomes a tool for growth. For many people, silence feels uncomfortable. The moment they're alone, they reach for their phone, social media, music, or distractions, because being alone often means facing thoughts they've been avoiding. But deep thinkers experience solitude differently. To them, solitude is not punishment, it's fuel. It's where they process experiences, reflect on life, and understand themselves more deeply. These are often the people who enjoy long walks with their thoughts. They journal, they read, they observe. They ask questions that most people never stop long enough to consider. Instead of constantly seeking stimulation, they seek understanding. And that's an important difference. People often mistake them for being antisocial. But in reality, they're usually not avoiding people. They're avoiding shallow interaction. Small talk drains them. Meaningful conversations energize them. They would rather spend an evening exploring ideas, learning something new, or reflecting on life than spend hours surrounded by noise that adds nothing to their growth. Because they understand that solitude, when used wisely, can become one of the greatest teachers in life. 3. They protect their peace with strong boundaries. One of the biggest reasons some people have fewer friends is surprisingly simple. They stopped tolerating relationships that cost them their peace. As we grow older, we begin to realize that not every relationship deserves unlimited access to our lives. Some people bring encouragement, others bring constant drama. Some inspire growth, others drain energy. People with strong boundaries eventually learn that saying no is not selfish. It's necessary. They no longer feel obligated to stay connected to individuals who constantly disrespect, manipulate, criticize, or exhaust them. And yes, setting boundaries often comes with consequences. Some people will leave, others will become upset. But emotionally mature individuals understand something important. Temporary guilt is often a small price to pay for long-term peace. They know that protecting their mental well-being is more important than maintaining relationships that continuously harm them. So when they walk away from negativity, it isn't because they're cold-hearted. It's because they finally learned to respect themselves. Sometimes having fewer people around isn't a loss. Sometimes it's evidence of growth. 4. They notice what others miss. Some individuals have an unusually strong ability to observe human behavior. They notice inconsistencies. They pick up on subtle changes in tone. They sense tension before anyone says a word. They can often tell when someone is being genuine and when someone is performing. This doesn't mean they possess supernatural abilities. It simply means they pay attention. While others focus on words, they focus on patterns. While others listen to what people say, they notice what people repeatedly do. Because of this awareness, they can become highly selective about who they allow into their lives. They understand that not everyone who smiles has good intentions. intentions. Not every invitation leads to meaningful connection, and not every crowd provides belonging. As a result, they often choose quality over quantity. They would rather spend time alone than constantly expose themselves to environments that feel emotionally exhausting. It's not arrogance, it's discernment. They've learned that protecting their emotional energy is just as important as protecting their physical health. 5. They are constantly evolving. Perhaps the most misunderstood reason some people lose friendships is growth. Growth changes people. It changes priorities, values, habits, goals, and sometimes it changes relationships. As individuals heal, mature, and become more self-aware, they often discover that certain connections no longer align with who they are becoming. This can be painful, but it's also natural. Not everyone is meant to accompany you through every stage of your life. Some people are connected to an older version of you, and when that version changes, the relationship changes too. People who are evolving quickly often find themselves spending more time alone, not because they dislike others, but because they're in the middle of becoming someone new, and transformation can be a lonely process. The reality is that growth sometimes creates distance, not out of hatred, not out of superiority, but out of different directions. The strongest individuals understand that outgrowing certain environments is sometimes necessary for becoming their best selves. So if you find yourself spending more time alone than most people, don't immediately assume that something is wrong. Ask yourself a different question. Are you lonely? Or are you simply becoming more intentional about who gets access to your life? Because there is a huge difference. People who walk alone are not automatically wiser, stronger, or better than everyone else, but many have learned lessons that others spend years trying to understand. They've learned how to validate themselves, how to enjoy their own company, how to protect their peace, how to recognize unhealthy relationships, and how to keep growing even when growth requires walking a different path. Remember this: being surrounded by people is not the same as being understood, and having fewer relationships doesn't mean your life has less value. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is stop chasing every crowd and start building a life that genuinely feels like their own. Thank you for watching. If this video resonated with you, consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more psychology insights. Until next time.